It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
How do you like that smooth music?
Very smooth.
Sound? Checking. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Secular Sexuality. I'm Megan. With me is, of course, my co-host.
Howdy, I'm Christy Powell.
And today we have a guest with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lily Bacon.
And today, slight sound issue, new headphones. Today we are back on the topic of kink. Yay!
Hey.
As everyone was actually really enjoyed, I think, our last episode of kink. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this one too. I guess with kink, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, when we're talking about sex, it's definitely important that we get into the naughty stuff as often as we can. I think that definitely sells.
Well, of course. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the internet to figure that one out.
Rule 34.
Yeah, no question.
34?
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, our special guest, would you like to introduce how you are related to the topic of kink?
Sure. I'm a kinkster. I mean, pretty simply. I've been active in the Austin kink scene for about 5 years.
Okay.
There was a good 2.5, 3 years where I was running one of the major monthly parties, one of the larger parties that happened every month, co-hosting it along with the owner of the house and some other members of my kink house. So that kind of brought me some reputation in the community. I am currently running a Facebook group that is specifically for people who are both kinky and poly,
Okay.
which is a substantial Venn diagram overlap, of course.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty large group.
Nice.
So I think that's why you reached out to me in the first place, was just knowing me from that Facebook group.
Yeah, and one of the tricky things is about these types of groups and really the kink community in general is that, we're not mentioning a specific group. We're not directing people to come and join a particular thing. And that kind of speaks to one of the questions we get all the time, which is how does somebody, whether they're coming to a new city or they're just coming into the concept of kink, get into community and find where those munches are and find how to join those groups. And it's kind of an invite-only situation in a lot of cases. Yeah, so what is that like? I mean, how does somebody get in?
Break the barrier?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, there are some national organizations that have branches all over the place. That helps. There's a group called Group with No Name, Gwen. They're all over the place. SAADE, SAADE, is, I think, not only local. I think there are branches elsewhere. There's, for instance, there's a group that is just for women and, well, female identified folks to learn how to top with rope. It's called Hitchin' Bitches, and it's international.
Oh, I love that.
And Hitchin' Bitches has an Austin chapter.
Ooh.
So, yes, it does. There are local, national, international groups, and if you can find them, then you could hook in that way. But the most common way that people wind up getting into the kink scene in Austin is through, actual word of mouth, through people they know. I came into it through my first poly partner as I opened a 26-year marriage and fell madly in love with somebody who turned out to be a kinkster, and he started inviting me to parties, and we started exploring, and I very quickly figured out that, oh yeah, that was me. So that was sort of how that happened. And then you just meet people at the events and the parties and the munches, and before you know it, you're a well-known kinkster.
Yeah, so that's sort of by design then, the fact that it is mostly word of mouth, it is mostly like getting an invitation, and that's largely to protect people.
It is,
right? But from letting just total strangers come in when there are ropes and chains and nudity and all of these very vulnerable circumstances involved.
There are other ways, though. For example, there are businesses that run classes, like I know Forbidden Fruit and Q Toys, which are sex toy shops, really wonderful locally owned sex toy shops, and they run classes. I have taught at some of the classes or co-taught, and so I wanted to go to one a few weeks ago that was a class all about pegging. You could do that. There's classes on bondage. There's all sorts of classes. And those have a very low barrier to entrance. Pretty much you go into the shop and you sign up and you pay your $20. You go to the class, and it's being taught by kinksters who are already in the scene. So that's one way that you could come into the scene from completely the outside, knowing absolutely no one. But you're absolutely right. It is there are protections to the scene, which is why munches happen before parties tend to. I'm assuming you know the definition of munches.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for our audience who may be listening, first timers, hello and welcome. Would you mind explaining?
Sure.
What a munch is?
Absolutely. And in fact, I use the word munch sometimes as a test, as a I see you, I know you, I recognize you, game knows game kind of test. For instance, it's on my OkCupid profile, the thing that says, what do you do on a typical Friday night? I list a bunch of things I might be doing and just kind of threw in, could be at a munch, just to see who picks up on it. Because I'm either going to get a munch.
It's a little bit of a dog whistle, sure.
Yeah, or I'm going to get, what the heck is a munch? And either way, I'm going to know something about the person. So a munch is a purely social gathering of kinksters. Usually they're in public. Often they're at a bar or a restaurant. And if you saw a munch happening and didn't know what it was, it just looks like a large group of people being social in a completely normal way. Everybody's dressed. You might see a few people wearing collars, maybe, but they'll be subtle. And if you go and listen to the conversation, there's a lot more, kind of talk about kink or about sex, and it's clearly a very sex-positive crowd. But it's just a social gathering. And the point of it is so that the folks entering the community have a chance to get their comfort level and discover that these kinksters are not a bunch of scary people. And it's also for the people in the community to figure out that the new folks coming in are not going to be a disruptive force. Before, those new folks would wind up going to a party and dealing with a bunch of naked people and in a sexually charged atmosphere. It's a vetting process.
Yeah, and it's hard to know how to act for folks who are coming into that completely cold. I mean, there's a good reason that not only is the kink community needing to protect itself from, foxes getting into the hen house and having that opportunity to vet people, but also good, well-meaning people completely coming in cold without any sort of experience or practice or just a little bit of mental rehearsal can find themselves making really bad choices when they're tasked with this very strange environment.
If nothing else, they may just be very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Or socially awkward and unsure of the etiquette of the situation because this community has its own etiquette, very much so.
Or they read 50 Shades of Grey and thought it would be fun and have no clue of, the dynamic and as you say, the etiquette and the rules.
Right.
Because if there's one thing I know about the kink community, there are rules.
Lots and lots
of rules. Yeah.
I've had some experience with the swinger community. Not my favorite. More power to the swingers. Great. No problem. I've been to swing parties. I will go to more swing parties. It happens. But what
It happens.
It happens.
Happens.
What are you likely doing on a random Friday night? I mean, maybe not most Fridays, but occasionally swinging will happen.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But typically what I have seen is that the rules are very, very different. And the rules at a kink party are so codified and boundaried. And it really comes down to consent. There's nobody more consent aware than a large group of kinksters. Because you really have to be careful about who you touch and how you touch and what you touch. So it all gets right down to
Consent.
clear, enthusiastic consent.
And that's one of the things we actually talked about on air last week is I think that the kink community does an incredible job of teaching outsiders, of teaching people in the community, and even people who aren't necessarily interested in kink, who have, maybe a gentle concept of some light spanking could be possibly okay, but ropes and chains and all of this is completely outside of what they're interested in. I still think that there's a great value in learning from the kink community and recognizing that ability to form community and use that as a vetting process, but then also to as a way of learning about consent, because I don't know of any other part of our society that's doing as good of a job of making that explicit and important.
I would completely agree with that.
Yes. And I know, just we like to say, your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay.
Yep.
And I think in the same way with, getting the conversation about consent from the kink community, saying, you don't have to be into this kink or that, but the basis of trust and consent is kind of, or should be universal. So.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a beautiful part of the community, and as we're saying, even if somebody's not necessarily interested in jumping in themselves, it might be worth it to look at your local sex store and see what kind of classes are coming up, and finding out maybe what does tickle your buttons that you didn't know about.
Float your boat.
Yeah, and really just having an opportunity to meet good people and learn from that society.
Yeah. I would like to take this opportunity to solicit some callers. We have open lines, and as always, we're going to be taking calls in a little bit. We, of course, will take questions from the live chat as well. And yes, shout out to FetLife. We will go over my short and not all that varied experience so far with FetLife.
Yeah, Megan is our resident vanilla expert.
Yes. I took a test. It was sad.
I think I have my test results in my phone. I know the test you mean, the kink test, yeah.
Well, I don't think it was the test, but it was a test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are a number of decent ones out there.
Yeah, there's one that pretty much all the FetLife folks take and post the results on their profiles, and it's kind of the default one. And it's actually, I've taken it multiple times over the 5 or so years that I've been aware that I was a kinkster, and I mean aware.
Right.
Because I think I always was, but it's been very interesting taking that test and watching my evolution because the results have changed.
Right. As you have gotten further into the community and explored different things.
As I've grown as a human.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll have to ask you about that one. I'd be curious to take that one. Well, I guess since I brought it up then, yes, FetLife, yay. Remember anyone who was watching back when I first set up the FetLife profile? When I said it was like a bad version of MySpace? Yeah, it's like a bad version of MySpace.
I mean, really, it's almost exactly like MySpace if MySpace had not changed whatsoever from when we all remember the glory days of like 2003, because I'm pretty sure FetLife hasn't actually seen an update since about 2003.
It's almost like MySpace and Pornhub had a kid, and that kid is FetLife, but it's like the ugly bastard child.
It's not searchable. That's
I was gonna say it's just not the easiest to navigate. I'll just put it that way. But I've received a few messages, 2 actually, but that's probably because I haven't really put myself out there. And I'd say they were interesting messages for sure. Again, me being Miss Vanilla over here, going, yes, that sounds interesting. I think I just realized that my kink is not your kink, but your kink is okay. And having to kind of, like honestly take a moment and think about, oh, does that sound like interesting or something I would want to try out, and go, not right now.
Yeah, often not. I do wonder, even with, my experiences as a sex therapist and, hosting a show like this and all of these different things, I find myself on FetLife and a number of other websites I don't want to say disgusted, because I certainly am not looking to shame anybody, but there is a visceral reaction to a lot of these images and videos and things, and a lot of it that doesn't jive with me can feel a little bit upsetting in some ways. And so I'm wondering what your experience is, coming in rather cold, and then as somebody who is not really kink-oriented or interested in most of these things, whether it is intimidating.
Sorry, I said yes.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. I mean, as Lily was saying, kink can be fluid.
Yeah.
Very fluid.
And evolve over time. My reaction, you're asking what is my visceral reaction?
Well, yeah, and if it's intimidating really to come in, or if anybody who's watching this right now is thinking about opening up another browser and, creating an account,
right,
what would you tell them to expect?
Well, so I can only speak from, of course, the female perspective. And to be completely honest, any intimidation yes, there is a feeling of intimidation. But to be honest, the feeling of intimidation that I feel is the same type of feeling of intimidation that I feel on any dating site, in any social situation where I'm on my own without like another person that I know to, back me up. It's that kind of feeling. It's not necessarily intimidation or intimidated by the kinks themselves or anything. Okay. More just the I don't know if it's a social anxiety. Is it still a social anxiety if it's on the internet?
Sure. Those are other humans out there.
Yeah. It's more that feeling, the feeling of vulnerability, and just the general feeling of vulnerability, not to do with any particular kink.
Yeah, and I mean,
that makes any sense.
As opposed to a more typical, and we don't even really want to refer to FetLife as a dating website, although there is kind of that component, but
it's meant to be Facebook for kinksters.
Yeah.
Social, not dating.
Sure. And with that being the case, it's very different from like a Facebook in the sense that people's vulnerability, their openness is very different for different sorts of folks. There are some people who, don't even have pictures of their faces and who are very, very guarded about what they share. And then there are plenty of other folks that are just completely naked and exposed. And that can be, in my mind, a little bit intimidating in trying to figure out, well, what is considered appropriate? We all joke about Karen from The Office that just constantly posts way too personal stuff on Facebook.
Karen.
But with FetLife, that level, that opportunity for maybe oversharing, or maybe that's a little bit too of a condemning tone to take, but people do share at very, very different levels. And that can make it difficult to know what the etiquette is, to know what's appropriate.
I feel like there really isn't an oversharing on FetLife, in that the community standard on FetLife is all sharing is acceptable and allowed.
It's all on the table.
It's completely on the table. I have quite a few people that I'm, quote, friended to on FetLife whose profile picture is a tight close-up of their genitals. That's the profile picture.
I was seeing that a lot.
And I've had the experience of being at kink parties and having somebody pop up and say, "Oh, hi, how's it going?" And I'm not recognizing their face. And later on go, "Oh, yeah, that guy."
Yeah.
A little to the left. Yeah, that guy. So
should have led with that. If you just pulled your pants down, I would have remembered you, recognized you immediately.
But an hour later in the party, that's what happens. So, but but that's the thing is you go into FetLife understanding that that is the community standard. You're going to see what you see. You get to post what you want to post. The option for standards is your own, but everybody else has their own options.
Right, and it's kind of, like we already said, all on the table, so it's take it or leave it wherever you are at.
Yes, exactly.
And sorry, your comments just reminded me of a movie, and I can't even remember what it was, but Susan Sarandon was in it, and it was in Goldie Hawn, and they were looking back at old pictures that they had taken when they were in their 20s, and they basically, every guy they slept with, they took a Polaroid of his junk, and they had saved them all, and they couldn't remember anything except they recognized every single picture. And so, just remember. So let's see here. Do you have my computer? Sorry, everyone, if I keep looking down, my computer's being wonky. But did you have any questions coming through in the chat yet that might be?
Yeah, not at the moment.
Okay.
We would definitely love to hear from you. Of course, we do have a number of lines open. I am seeing one now. Is FetLife suitable for somebody who's curious but married or in a relationship? Is it like a dating website? We're definitely saying that it's not a dating website. I mean, there are connections.
People can use it just like with anything else. Sure. People can use it to hook up. And apparently some people are trying. But
there are definitely
that is
people
not
who try
its
to use
primary
it
purpose.
Right. It's meant to be social connection like Facebook. It's meant to be keeping up with the kinky doings and the musings and the thoughts and the photographs of all your kinky friends, plus links to the events that are happening and discussion groups and forums. I mean, I just described Facebook and FetLife in every way. But that being said, on Facebook, I do occasionally get a cold private message from somebody saying, I just ran across your profile. Oh, you're so beautiful and we should get to know each other. And I'm like, who the heck are you? That is not how Facebook works. FetLife does work a bit more like that. It does. My inbox on FetLife is full of people approaching me. But
often unsolicited?
Well, the difference is that when you fill out your profile on FetLife, it has drop-down menus for you to select things about yourself. And so it's all by scene name or pseudonym. It's very few people have their real name, although I know a few people who do. Yeah. Very brave of them. But it'll say you choose your role. So you might say dom or sadist, or you might say questioning or evolving. There's a huge drop-down menu of what your role is. It also lets you do connections to your people. So you'd say in a relationship with, or married to, or little girl of, or
colored by,
all of those different, and you can have multiple, because FetLife has no problem with the whole poly concept. So you can have multiple different connections like that. But it also has a part that says what you're seeking, and if you fill that out at all, then that's a little bit of a door open for that. So, for example, mine says I'm a switch, which terminology I can play on either side of the dom sub / I do a little of both, and it currently, I think, I haven't checked it in forever, but I think it currently says that I would be open to seeking a submissive of my own. So the last few times I've opened my FetLife, my inbox is full of people saying that they want to worship at my feet. Okay, cool. I somewhat invited that because one of the photos I put up was a photo of my feet, which are very pretty. I have nice feet, and it attracts the foot fetish guys.
Brings boys to the yard.
Yes, that's a very niche market. So because I put something there that sort of left that door open, my inbox is full of that. I could have put not seeking anything or seeking events only or friends only, and I would still have an inbox full of that because that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask about. I'm not a super active user on FetLife, but I know that I have, as you've said, looked at people's profiles that say they're looking for this or that, the other, and I've thought, well, I'm a this or I'm a that. I'm definitely the other, and I've reached out to those people. And yet, at the same time, I have never, ever received an unsolicited message to me. Huh. And, maybe that could be the way my profile's set up. I mean, it's certainly not my pictures, But I do think that it's probably a very, very different experience for women in general in terms of who's doing the asking, of who's reaching out. And I just wonder how overwhelming it must be to every time you log in have 50 messages that you're maybe having to sort through, or do you even feel like you have to pay attention to that?
I don't. Not with FetLife. Because I'm not super actively seeking that way. FetLife is not the way to find kink partners, in my experience.
Sure.
Your mileage may vary, and I'm sure some people have had a lot of success with it. But for me, that has been true. For me, I much more often will source partners from real life and from parties and events and friends and that sort of thing. Yes, I open my inbox and it's full of things, and I often don't even bother to read them. For one thing, my profile says I'm in there very rarely. My profile also says, I don't use it as a dating site. If we know each other in real life from munches and parties, well, sure.
Then reach
I'm
out.
sociable.
Sure.
We can make friends.
Do you feel that people respect that they are actually reading? Yeah, and well, so maybe that's kind of my point.
Do.
Is I have to imagine the experience is pretty different being a woman in that situation. Am I projecting here?
I am a very atypical feminist.
Sure.
Let's start with that as the grounding.
Okay.
You're never going to get me to go, men, rah, rah, rah.
Oh, yeah.
Just not going to do it.
Yeah, no.
I love men. I love women. I like humans. And I really, really make a very firm policy of accepting all humans on an individual basis. So that's my ground bottom line on all of that. That being said, of course there are patterns, but I tend to look at it more as not so much a gendered thing, but as a point on the journey. And kink has a journey. Kink and poly both have a really well-defined journey that the vast majority of people entering either of those things is going to take. There's a phase aspect to it. You go through specific phases. Of course, a lot of people get stuck in some of those phases, and that's just
where they are.
Where they are. That's their part of the journey. That being said, of course, there are some patterns. For example, in the Kinky and Poly Facebook group that I run, one of the folks in the group posted a screenshot from FetLife of a message in her inbox that was annoying. It was just an annoying message.
Yeah.
And she was commenting on it, and somebody else said, "Oh, I got the same one, verbatim." And then we all went and checked, and all of us had gotten it, and I mean 50 of us. 50 out of the, 400, 500 people who are in that group.
Right.
And I think the distribution is roughly male-female equal, but that is a large percentage.
Right.
And that's just the folks who happened to be in my Facebook group that day who happened to
happen to have noticed
this
that post.
guy copy-pasted this message to every person he could find, every even switch or female dom that he could find. It was a "let me worship at your feet" message.
Gotcha.
And it was just eye-rollingly
A little
cringy.
thirsty.
It was thirsty and cringy. But it was also the disrespect of that it was such a copy-paste job. And that's a common kind of thing that we find in the inboxes. So, yeah, there's some patterns there. That was the moment in that guy's journey. So,
I mean, I think that that's a very generous way of looking at it, and I definitely do appreciate that. I just know that so often it feels a little overwhelming to be in any kind of like kink space or in that situation. And I mean, I've been with women who've just talked about how it's daunting to even like turn their computers on because it feels like they're just constantly getting inundated with those types of messages, and to try and use the site in a way that's effective when you're having to like sort through all of the spam and all of the, you know, those copy paste messages.
I think I probably felt that initially. I mean, if I'm remembering back at the beginning, I think that was true. But I think what has made the difference is that I no longer feel that I'm under any obligation to even respond, and certainly not respond, but even acknowledge, even open a message from anyone on any site. OkCupid, Bumble, any of the, I don't have to, no. That's my inbox. They put their thing in it, and you know, that's their business. It means it's nothing that I have to deal with, so I don't have to be overwhelmed by it. It's just something that's sitting there. So that was a shift for me, though. I think at the beginning, I'm remembering I did sort of like, whoa. But I think I was also kind of thrilled about that because, again, my journey was coming out of a very vanilla 26-year marriage that when I opened it up, first thing I did was open up an OkCupid account and was the belle of the ball on OkCupid for a short time where, I mean, I was literally getting 75 to 100 messages a day. And I think I did feel like I needed to open them all and respond. And for a while there, school people on proper behavior. You do that enough, you give that up pretty quick, though.
Yeah.
So your advice maybe then to a woman who's considering jumping in or just getting involved in not just FetLife, but kind of the kink community in general is to recognize that you don't owe anybody anything that you haven't promised them.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you set your own expectations. You move through the world on your own. And, you know, somebody coming up and saying you're cute is, well, you know.
It's flattering.
That's it. That's all it is. Thanks.
But it doesn't create in you a sense of obligation.
Any obligation whatsoever. So.
No, I would actually say that sounds like a one of those phases you were talking about.
Yep. Yep.
So looking at the time, are we ready to play a game?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got something dialed up for y'all. We, of course, do have plenty of lines open. If anybody'd like to call in, we'd certainly love to hear from you.
And I will just say before we get into the game, I will rearrange my computer in a moment. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you like what you're hearing or seeing, or both. See us on Patreon. We do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/secularsexuality. And check us out on Facebook. I'm not sure the link in the show notes right now is current, but by the end of tonight it will be. And Christy, do we need our wonderful point counters for this game?
You know, it's never a bad idea.
Okay.
Let's definitely bring them out.
Safety first. Okay, so can I explain the point counters, or did you already?
No, please do. Okay. Although I should point out, we may need to buy some more because every time we take one out, we, of course, throw it away.
We don't.
Because we don't reuse them.
Your condoms. Sorry. CDC has had to say multiple times not to reuse your condoms.
Okay.
Yes. And so it's kind of become a running gag for us. So every time you get a point, you take one of the finger cots and you put it on your finger. Okay. The person, of course, with the most at the end wins. And no, that's not,
not quite.
That's not how that works. That apparently is not how that there. Nope, that's still not. Nope. Anyway, Hi.
Hi. So so we're going to be looking at some different acronyms that exist in the sex world. If you spend any amount of time on FetLife or any number of different dating websites or sex positive websites,
Really, even just porn sites.
yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of these. So we're going to do this kind of a spelling bee style. I'm going to ask each of y'all. I'm going to give each of y'all an acronym. You're going to have to tell me what that acronym actually stands for. You can ask for a definition.
So we're playing Stump the Kinkster?
Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that.
Oh, you're totally gonna win. I mean, I'm gonna put it out there right now.
I don't know. I'm always learning. There's always something more to learn about this.
Well, and a little bit of a spelling bee style. So if I ask Megan a question and she's not able to answer, Lily, of course, has an opportunity to steal. And if we get to the end and neither of y'all have slipped up, I've got a couple of tiebreakers that I feel pretty confident about.
That somebody's gonna get.
Yeah. So, for instance, if I were to say, Megan, what does BDSM stand for?
I would say BDSM is bondage. Hang on, because I know we did this.
This is not the question. This is just the sample easy softball
Bondage
that I'm pitching
domination.
right down the middle for you.
Yeah, bondage, domination, S. I have to do the letters, and I'm tired. Submissive and masochistic.
Sadism and masochism.
But
Yeah.
also submissive, and the D is also sometimes for degradation. Bondage and degradation is a thing.
Yeah, I will say that there are a few alternates on a couple of these.
Okay.
So,
You mean like the one that Serafina and I were having fun with the other week?
So, Megan, I'm going to go ahead and give you the first real question, give you a little bit of a shot here. What does CGL stand for?
Oh, good Lord, I know this. I know this. Wow, I am having an off night. Okay, no, toss it over because I know this, but I
Lily
can't
for the
think.
steal.
I'm absolutely stumped.
Oh, really?
Really?
I know this. I just can't think of it right
We
now.
just talked about this last week.
I know.
Neither of y'all. Wow. Okay. Well, I guess
I've
this
had a
is for
long day.
me. So that is a caregiver little relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
CG/L. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Slash is involved.
I was trying to go like cock and glute. I don't know.
Hey, you just assume
Put 'em together
there's going to
somehow.
be a cock in there somewhere, and
In a perfect world, yes.
right. Yeah. Okay. How about? Well, let's see. I guess Lily, you'll be up next. CBT.
Well, it can be cognitive behavioral therapy.
Which is
no.
very confusing for every
Thank you.
therapist
Right?
at a kink conference who has to like switch brains real quick.
And this one totally has cock in it. Cock and ball torture.
There you go. All right, so that's one for you.
Awesome.
All right. Megan, you ready?
No, but sure.
DADT.
I know what DTF is.
Hey, there you go.
Say that again. DT.
DADT.
No. See, I'm totally not going to get any of this.
Yeah, all right.
I know. See, I was not like, yeah, no, she's totes going to win.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yep, that's correct.
A relationship style regarding polyamory agreement between people.
Oftentimes, yeah. Okay, so I guess back to Lily. All right, let's go a little trickier. How about GGG?
Oh, St. Dan Savage coined that one.
Right? Yeah, he can give you the origin of that
Yes,
one too.
good, giving, and game. So it's what one aspires to be as a lover. Good, have some skills, be good at it. Giving, care about your partner's pleasure, at least as much, if not more than your own. And game, be up to try some stuff.
Yeah, game for
giving and game.
anything within reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as it's not morally repugnant to you, give it a shot.
Absolutely.
That's the theory.
All right. Let's see, Megan.
Yes.
YKINMYBYKIOK.
Your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay.
Hey, and Megan gets on the board.
Yay! It'll be my only one.
All right. This is another with a few different options to it. LGBTQIA.
Okay, so it's the umbrella term for queerness. You're wanting a definition on each of the letters?
Yeah, I mean, just what each letter stands for. And I actually want to interrupt you just for a moment to respond to something that I know has come up a couple of times in the comment section. That word queer. You know, it's definitely a slur. It has been used as a pejorative. Right, but it's been very much reclaimed.
Yep.
And it's actually very common for people in the community. I mean, I include myself in that, to use that word in a very positive way rather than going through the entire acronym of everything that falls under the LGBTQIAA. There's an extra Q for some folks, like all of those different
Actually,
descriptors.
I've heard a really lovely alternative that I would prefer to start seeing more accepted.
Yeah.
It's SAGA. Have you heard that one? SAGA?
I feel like I have, but help me out.
So it stands for Sexuality and Gender Acceptance, SAGA. Total umbrella, absolutely inclusive in every way, and it means a long and difficult journey to reach something. So that's
Wherever on the spectrum you may be.
Saga's fantastic. Much preferred, and it's completely inclusive. We don't have to add on a P for pansexual and I for intersex, which also means, what is the other thing for intersex? There's something else for I in addition to that. I know there is. But, okay, so lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgendered, and then we had Q for queer and I for intersex, although I feel like there's another something there. A for asexual. Did I cover them all?
Yeah, nope, you're there.
So,
Oh, yeah.
there we go.
Megan, I'm
Yeah.
giving you every opportunity here.
I
How
know.
about STI?
Sexually transmitted infection.
Hey,
There we go.
all right.
Wow, that was really softball. But I still
You
got
know,
a point.
I mean, you're competing. You're competing. Okay. FTM.
Female to male. Reference to transgendered folks who start off female and wind up male.
Absolutely. All right. And let's see, Megan.
Yes.
How about PrEP?
I know what PrEP is, and I'm trying to think of what it actually stands for. It's an antiviral that is used. Is this the context that you're speaking?
Yeah, you've got the right definition. It's a medication prescribed by a healthcare provider to prevent HIV infection before someone is exposed.
Right.
Preventative, before someone's exposed.
Prevention, pre-exposure prevention. I missed an R.
Pre-exposure prophylaxis.
Prophylaxis. Okay.
Yeah. You weren't going to wander your way into that one, so
No,
I thought I would, I thought I
Let
would
me
jump
sign
in.
it out for you.
All right. It looks like we're starting to get a few calls rolling in. We'll definitely take a few more, so please use the number at the bottom of your screen. And I've got just a few more here. How about ASMR?
As in talking into mics?
Yeah, so ASMR, if we're looking at a definition, I wouldn't necessarily call it a kink or even a sex word in the same way we wouldn't say about CGL, but I do think it's relevant here because ASMR is kind of a kink the same way that high heels are a kink. You know, it's not necessarily, yes, that's true, but more to my point, it's ASMR and sex go together the way that sex and high heels go together, which is kind of not at all, unless you're on a porn website and then they just try to jam those things together all the time, whether they make any kind of damn sense or not.
Because it's hip now.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember what it stands for. I just know I've seen plenty of YouTube of people talking around their mic like this.
Yes.
A whole lot of that.
And a lot of like brushing.
I went shopping
and
today, and we're going to slowly look at... Hi,
Yes.
the rest of YouTube. We're Secular Sexuality, and we just want to introduce ourselves to, I think, about 90% of YouTube at this point, it seems.
I'm going to
Feels
guess
that
PA
way.
is audio, but that's what I got.
That's what I was just, audio sensory,
Sure.
I mean, yeah, that was actually like a reasonable stab. Totally off, but like, it was a reasonable attempt. This was meant to be a showstopper. This is autonomous sensory meridian response.
I got sensory. I got
Wow.
sensory.
Okay.
Yeah, so meridian responses are a very confusing and pseudo-real aspect of our understanding of neurology and just the human brain. Not worth diving into, but it's an interesting thing that folks might want to take a look at because a lot of people have very strong experiences with, and sometimes those experiences are tied into sexuality. So if you're watching this now, maybe type it into that YouTube search bar and find out a little something interesting about yourself.
I enjoy occasionally some ASMR.
Oh, yeah?
It's interesting, and it makes it easy to go to sleep.
Yeah, it's soothing in a way.
Yeah, it's very soothing. Yeah. But, all right. Well, how many did you...
Okay. Yeah, well, I think this was pretty clear.
Yeah, from the beginning. I should have just waved the white finger caught. So, we are needing more callers. We can also take questions through the chat, but would love it if you would call. So we have one caller on the line, which means this show is about to get really, really off the rails or is about to end early if we don't get calls. So, let's see here. We have Kendall on the line. Hi, Kendall. You
Hi.
are... Oh, hello.
Sorry,
No,
I
you're
know this
good.
drill too well.
Yes.
How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So what I thought would be an interesting topic is, so I have always been monogamous, and recently I am now dating a girl who is poly. And the more that I've kind of educated myself about like polyamory and all of the different kinds of polyamory that you can practice, I have kind of realized how deeply ingrained into the queer community polyamory is. And I understand that there are a lot of straight people who practice the same thing, but my question was, I was wondering if anybody had any good guesses as to why it has such a strong relationship with the queer community.
Yeah, I think that's a great question and something I've actually been thinking about myself a little bit recently. I am poly, and I have been dating a monogamous woman for 9 months now, and things have been going really great. And I noticed one of the differences in our relationship is I think she may be the first like strictly straight woman I have ever dated, which means that she has never been a part of the queer community and queer culture. And there's a lot that I just sort of take for granted in terms of like vernacular and just the words that we use, the way that we communicate, and a lot of things that she just hasn't been exposed to. I mean, she is certainly an ally and an educated person, but just has never been a part of that scene. So I think that it's a really interesting observation that you're making, because I do think that that's true. And I think the obvious answer is probably the most likely one, which is just that folks who are in the queer community have already had something of a coming out experience. They're more exposed to sex literature, to just the options of life, because they've had to sort of create their own path. Beyond that, though, what do y'all think?
Well, I know for myself, I would take it to a slightly religious place, because, we are the ACA, that if you are going to break from the social and religious shackles enough to identify as queer, you are more likely to be accepting of, human nature, really. And
That's a very, very good observation. I like that a lot.
Yeah, after a certain point, the cat's out of the bag, so
Right.
you might as well just go for it.
Right, yeah. And
Right.
the more you, I think, deal with those hang-ups, I mean, we can, for lack of a better term, the hang-ups and the stigma and everything, as that falls away, what are you left with? Because humans, I think we feel that we are more special out of the animal kingdom than we really are. And the rest of the animal kingdom is polyamorous. The rest of the animal kingdom is transgender. The rest of the animal kingdom is bisexual. The rest of the animal
it includes these elements throughout. Yeah,
and so does the human race. And when we, get over our religious issues and our social stigmas, what we're left with is we are a part of the animal kingdom, and that's just natural.
Yeah, that's also a really cool observation is, people talk about how animals don't mate for life, but we never really consider that they're polyamorous.
I think it kind of works both directions.
I know that's the same thing in different words, but that's just not something that's ever attached to when we look at animals and their sexuality and their, mating habits.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it can work for humans from both directions. It can be that you start out, discovering that you're bi or gay, and as you move through life, that leads you, as the two of you were both saying, to, hey, there are other options. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily have to just go with the societal default of monogamy. Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's check out poly. But it can work the other way around. Right. That was my story. I'm absolutely bi. But as I said, I was talking to the two of you before the show. I had a 26-year very vanilla marriage that, I was straight. And as I opened the marriage a couple years into that, it was like, hey, I've already taken one step outside of societal expectations. So if I'm no longer just accepting default, what's been given to me, what other boundaries do I have? Mm-hmm. And a variety of explorations happened, and one of them was, oh, hey, check it out, I'm actually bi. So
yeah,
I think that makes total sense to me because there's more opportunity for exposure. I mean, you said that you got into the kink community because of one of your partners,
yes.
And if you lock it down at 25 that you're only going to have one partner for the rest of your life, then that's not
a lot of life.
Yeah. That's number one. That's number one. But yeah, you have so much less exposure, so fewer opportunities to meet people, and I mean that's true of the type of sex that you're having, of the people you're having it with. I mean, but that's also true of just the sports that you watch or the music that you listen to. I mean, every new person I've dated has brought with them their own backstory and their own collection of their favorite bands and writers and everything else. And so that exposure, I think, is a big part of it.
Absolutely. One of my partners right now he was shocked and dismayed to discover that I have no background in heavy metal music at all. I know nothing about metal, just the way I was brought up. I had no exposure. And he's a huge metal fan. So I said, okay, fine, so teach me. And he's been giving me my very own one-person survey course of metal. And never would have had that in my life.
So it's not all craft work all the time?
No.
And sorry. I was just going to real quick respond to someone in the chat, just because someone suggested vanilla with no sprinkles. Yes, with sprinkles. Starting to put a little more sprinkles on top.
Just dashes of flavor.
What I was going to ask is, Megan, do you identify as poly or monogamous or?
Right now, I am kind of in a very interesting
questioning, maybe
questioning transitional point.
Uh-huh.
So
I honestly don't have an answer right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was super personal. The only reason I asked is because I was going to say, if I didn't want to leave you out of the discussion, because my next question was going to be, as people who are experienced in like a poly dynamic, one thing that I'm kind of having to overcome in my new relationship is jealousy. And I know that, like, that it happens, right, in polyamorous relationships. And I also believe there's a big difference between like possessive behavior and feeling the emotion of jealousy. So I'm not talking about possessive behavior. But one of what I am always looking for tips for is what are some of the ways that you guys overcome jealousy in your, like, you know, polyamorous relationships or with your partners?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the $1 million question, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kendall.
Well, so you can't overcome jealousy. Let's just
You
put
can
that on
just
the
work
table.
through it.
Jealousy's
Damn it.
it's always going to be there. Sorry.
Yeah.
But you can learn to work with it for better and for worse. I struggle mightily with it. Not in all situations, not with all partners. At the moment, I have a partner who elicits almost zero jealousy from me, and yet I'm engaged to him. I love him deeply. We live together. I feel just almost no jealousy and 100% compersion with him. I have another partner who I am madly in love with, don't live with, and he brings me all the jealousy through no ill effort on his part whatsoever. He's doing nothing that is not within our agreements as a couple. It's all me. And you always have to look at jealousy is not a standalone emotion. Right. It doesn't exist in a vacuum by itself. It's a layer that is sitting on top. It's the accessible, touchable layer for an emotion that lives underneath, which usually is fear, sometimes is anger. It's a negative emotion that you're uncomfortable with, and you rename it jealousy. In this case, I know what it is. It's a big fat wad of insecurity. I struggle with it. What makes it better? Communication. So much communication. Finding ways to feel secure, which is, to some degree the job of both partners. But ultimately, my jealousy is mine. It belongs to me. It is not his. Right. It is not his job. Right. I'm responsible for doing the work that is needed to work on my own insecurities, to work on what in my past, in my childhood, we're going to get all Freudian, led me to feel insecure enough that I'm experiencing that I'm triggered by, this particular partner in that way. That's my job. It's also my job, though, to not hide it from him, to tell him that I'm going through it, so that he's at least aware of why I'm acting squirrely, and I am acting squirrely about it.
Yeah. So on the topic of communicating your jealousy with a partner, because again, this is totally brand new to me, is that something that, like, if one of your guys' partners came to you and said, I'm feeling jealous, like, for whatever reason, you're spending more time with this partner, or like, I'm not getting enough this or that, is that off-putting?
I think I would say that in the sense that communication is important, that, it's good to acknowledge and to get that information out there and to acknowledge it. It's much better than, that somebody's just avoiding your calls and you don't know why. But where it gets tricky is when there's like an unstated obligation that comes with it. And that's where it becomes problematic. I can tell my partner, hey, I'm feeling jealous, but I would never want them to feel like, now that's your problem. I'm feeling jealous, now you fix it. I can express my emotions and I can talk about how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. But if it ever becomes coercive, if it ever starts to put pressure on them to change their behavior, to be something that they're not, or to do things differently in any way, then that's where it becomes problematic. And it's not that you can't ask for things. You can certainly say, I had the worst possible day. I am feeling really shitty about the idea of you going on this date or doing this thing. And, could you do something to reassure me? But as we talk about with anything else, it's not really a question if there's no opportunity to select between different answers. You know, if you're
Right.
telling somebody that I'm jealous and you're going to fix it, that's very different than saying, I'm having this experience and can you please help me with it?
Or just,
Right.
I'm having this experience right now, just so you know why I might be acting weird. This is the reason. You don't need to do anything. This is something I'm working through myself, but just so that you are aware, this is happening.
So
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure that you walked away from this with something a little bit actionable.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that being said, we can talk around the idea all night. And I do think it's important to remember that even these emotions that we label as negative, grief, pain, these different things, pain is something that evolution worked out on purpose. You know, if we can anthropomorphize a little bit, pain is useful and jealousy can be useful. It's uncomfortable and it's unpleasant, but it is something that's you wouldn't necessarily want to take a pill to get rid of it. You want to sort of acknowledge that its value and try to sort out where that emotion is coming from. A great way to do that is the Jealousy Workbook. The author's name is escaping me at the moment. Of course, always do your homework whenever you're approaching a big lifestyle change or choice, like, opening up a relationship or getting involved with somebody who is polyamorous. More than two is kind of the gold standard, I think, among a lot of poly folks. Ethical Slut, also a very popular book.
Yeah.
But in particular, the Jealousy Workbook is, I think, a good place to get a fix on yourself and what you can be doing.
Yeah, thank you. That's a super helpful resource.
And seek the support of other poly people as well.
Absolutely.
That's what you guys are here for, right?
Yep. There's a group that meets twice a month that does a Poly 101 twice a month, and they always have a topic to discuss, but new folks can come in and just say, I've got this issue and I want to talk about it. And it kind of functions as de facto group therapy for polys. So that's a resource.
Yeah, so get out there, get into community, find your local groups. I mean, certainly we don't want to conflate polyamory with kink, although we acknowledge that there is a lot of overlap. But in a lot of the same ways that we're talking about, you can get involved.
Yeah, so that's, I guess poly wouldn't even be considered part of the kink community. I don't know.
Big overlap.
I had just gotten through being totally comfortable being a lesbian, and now I'm like, a new thing. Oh shit! Like I just got hit by a brick wall.
It's always something new.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
There's a lot to enjoy and explore. And, I think Lily said really beautifully about how this is all just a journey. And there are no points. There's no rush to get anything figured out. The fun of it is the fun of it. There's no achievement that you're trying to unlock. You're just here living your life, looking to have the best possible time that you can. And hopefully some of these books and this community and these other resources can be a part of making this a richer, more fun experience, because this is it. This is what we've got. You have a life.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy it. One day you're going to die. So if it's making you miserable,
Change it
think
up.
about that. Yeah, change it up.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I really needed to hear a different perspective, and it was super helpful, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your show.
Hey, we appreciate
thank you.
it so much.
Talk
Good
to you
luck.
later.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, I would have to say jealousy is something that everyone deals with, and not just in romantic situations. I mean, it's one of our more base emotions. So,
and we use that word in sort of a global sense, but jealousy can be a lot of things. I mean, you talked about how sometimes it's coming from a place of insecurity, or it's these different things. Sometimes I'm not jealous of my partner seeing somebody else. I'm jealous of them not seeing me.
Exactly.
It's that fear of missing out jealousy, which is a little bit different.
That's the difference between jealousy and envy. Those are two very distinctly different things. Jealousy is you have that, I don't have that, I don't want you to have that. Envy is, you have that and I don't have that, and I also want that.
I wanted some of that.
I don't want to take it away from you. I just also want it. That's envy. And I feel envy, I think, more often than I actually feel jealousy. But my default is to assume that negative feeling is jealousy. And I rush right there, and I'm uncomfortable and unhappy about it, and sometimes make others uncomfortable and unhappy about it. But when I stop and really look at it, it's like, do I want the other person who I think is getting all the goodie to not have the goodie? No, I don't. I want them to have the goodie. I just also want
I just
the
wanted
goodie.
some too.
Or maybe a different goodie,
Yeah.
What?
A unique goodie. Unique goodies are always good.
So we actually have a couple callers, but we still have lines open. And I think the next call is going to be Alex. Alex, you are on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet all of you.
Howdy.
Good.
So my question is regarding labels, or I guess identities, and how you guys choose to take those on. I've been listening to the show, and you guys are talking about how sort of your sexuality is an evolution, which I totally agree with. I guess my hang-up is, when does something get actually integrated into, this is what I'm calling myself, this is who I am, versus, oh, this is just something I'm trying on, flavor of the week kind of thing.
I think the moment that you say that, it does.
Yeah.
You know, the moment that you decide to introduce yourself, stick your hand out and say, hi, I'm a kinkster. Hi, I'm gay. Hi, there's not a right time to do that. Sometimes will feel more right for you, but there's no magic litmus test unless I'm missing it.
And I'd say with that evolution, there's nothing wrong with you identifying one way today and tomorrow finding out that you want to identify a different way.
Absolutely.
I am kind of in that situation right now where I identify differently than I did 6 months ago, and I'm sure, almost positive, I'm going to identify differently in another 6 months as my wonderful journey from vanilla to whatever continues. It's just whatever label you want to use to identify yourself at that particular time, and no one's saying you even have to use a label.
Right. It definitely, I feel like labels help as sort of a shorthand to, I guess, what you're trying to get across. But I guess I just worry about, I feel sort of a sense of obligation as far as, when I choose to use a label like, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I'm representing myself to other people. And then should that label change, I almost feel like maybe I let somebody down, or does that make sense?
It does. I would say that's more maybe a fear of what other people think than how you feel.
Yeah.
About yourself, I mean.
Yeah, there's definitely a loud voice of people that would say that these labels don't matter and that we should feel comfortable taking them off and putting them on, and maybe we should just do away with them altogether. And I think that there's some valid points in that. I do think that feeling comfortable sort of throwing words around a little bit and not overly stressing this particular box that you're in, or checking off this or that or the other. At the same time, I know that I've really suffered. I've really bled for some of these adjectives that I ascribe to myself. And so they are incredibly important, but kind of only because I say that they are. It's the meaning that I give them that has value. It's not anybody else's understanding of what those words mean. It's not anybody else's judgment. It's the fact that they matter to me, and I've fought for them, that make them so important to me personally. And you get to decide how meaningful those things are and what it really means to take on that type of label or adjective.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess probably where I'm struggling the most is identity, really. Like, I have a clear idea of what I want out of a relationship, but I have a really hard time sort of verbalizing that. Like, even using those labels, I feel like it doesn't really get across, like, what I'm really looking for. Like, I've been on FetLife, and that was a short-lived adventure because there's, 50,000 labels on there. And I'm like, I don't know. I just want to meet people and try stuff out. And can we just hang out?
And I think you'll find the kink community is pretty welcoming of that. We do use the labels as shorthand, very much so. But it's perfectly acceptable within the community, if somebody says, where do you fall on, for example, the domination submission scale, to just go, I don't know, still exploring, kind of fluid.
TBD.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I've never met anybody in the community that would really want to force you to make a decision about that. But, they might offer to help you explore.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds like I'm maybe seeing some really hard lines where there aren't really any hard lines. It's sort of just preferences.
Well, it's entirely possible that what you're experiencing is some of because it sounds like it's mostly online rather than in person. Am I right about that? Like I said, I'm single right now, and I'm pretty sure that I'm poly as far as that goes. I know it's not really kink, but I have a hard time sort of taking on that label, because I feel like by taking on a label or an adjective that I'm kind of maybe putting myself in a box or cutting myself off to other experiences. Okay. If I say, I identify this way, then that sort of draws a line there, and then I'm in this box, and then other people are over here, and maybe they're having more fun over there. Well, if it's more about being poly as opposed to being somewhere within one of the kink spectrums, there are lots of people who flow in and out of poly. It is entirely possible to be essentially poly by nature, but to make a choice to be in a monogamous relationship. I've absolutely seen people who are really monogamous by nature attempting to be poly, and sometimes rising to it, sometimes doing a tremendous amount of self-work and rising to it and eventually doing pretty well with it. So I think it's perfectly fine to say that you're not to own the poly as a label, but as a relationship style. There are people who feel like, no, it's a label for them, but it's very debatable as to whether or not it's something that you put on as an identifier as opposed to a relationship choice.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and of course, again, that just means that is how you're identifying at the moment, and that changes and can change at any point when you say that it does.
I guess I've heard it sort of explained both ways, probably by people who are using it both ways, either as polyamorous doesn't really describe me, it's just describing this relationship. And then I've heard it totally the other way, polyamory is not a choice for me, this is just how I'm built, this is who I am. And I don't know, I guess I'm sort of figuring out at this point where I fall on that spectrum as far as is this a choice? Am I just being hard-headed or stubborn about this is what I have to be happy, and maybe I am closing myself off to some potentially great experiences.
Poly self-doubt is basically par for the course. I mean, I think that's definitely going to be part of it, and there's that asking yourself, is this worth it? Is the social stigma, is the jealousy, is the everything that can go along with it worth it? And that can be a difficult question, and it's a question that's made all the more difficult by social shame and religious stigma and all of that. The question of is polyamory, say, more like an orientation versus like a kink or maybe a choice? That is not easy to answer. I mean, I actually went to a conference with two incredible speakers that are, major authors in the sex therapy world. And I basically posed that question to both of them and got two different answers about is polyamory a orientation, say. And I tend to feel that it's a part of who you are. It's not necessarily a lifestyle choice. But it is you do have options about what to do with that if it is like integral to who you are as a person. And not everybody even believes that that's the case. So it's difficult to sort out how you feel and what feels like a good fit for you. But even if we do see it as an orientation, we also recognize that people's orientations are fluid and changing. So maybe this is all academic. At the end of the day, it's about, again, finding how you're going to have your best life and find your best happiness.
Yeah. I think probably a big part of the issue is just spending a lot of time in my own head about things of like, oh, this is the ideal or something like that. And I'm living in a really small town right now, and it's hard to sort of, I guess, like I said, verbalize to other people like where I'm at or what I'm looking for. I used to live on the West Coast, and it was super easy. I was part of like the ethical non-monogamy of Central Oregon, and I had people there, and I felt like we were speaking the same language. And it's, I guess, being outside of that is causing me to question myself, like, am I crazy?
Yeah, it's tricky to be isolated, no question.
It is. And in Austin, you don't have to be. There's an enormous poly community here. Absolutely enormous. Come find us.
Yeah, it might be time to pick up and find somewhere new.
Well, Austin is a wonderful place to not just live, but, live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like everybody who's actually in Austin watching this right now is like, stop, unplug their microphones, turn it
Right.
off. Don't tell people to move here.
No more.
We're done. But wherever
I-35
you are.
can't take any more.
Yeah.
Sorry, inside Austin joke.
Yes, totally.
But yeah, wherever you are, the opportunities may be limited, and that is tricky and uncomfortable. But we would encourage you to find community, whether it's online, whether it's by calling in and watching shows like this one. We like to let people know that there are other folks like you out there, and we hope to be a little bit of a welcoming point for all sorts.
Part of that community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your call, Alex.
Thank you guys for taking it. I appreciate it. This is my first time calling in, so it's an excellent experience.
Well, we really appreciate it.
And look forward to when we get to hear from you again.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too. Yeah. Gender identity and orientation identity are always, I think, not always, but oftentimes very fluid and very difficult for people because of those labels and how society uses those labels versus how we think we should use the labels. But
yeah, and I mean, even like a word like polyamory, which doesn't have nearly the baggage of, say queer or fag or something that can be really, really triggering and hurtful to hear. Even a word like polyamory is often hurled as a slur, or just comes with a lot of shame and difficulty. So yeah, it is very, very tricky to decide how to apply that label and whether to be out with that label. I mean, obviously we're here with our names in front of us, in front of recorded on the internet, but I know plenty of lovely poly folks that don't have that opportunity to be out and to be so open with those labels.
Right.
And so, I like to use my privilege to encourage people to be out and to be, to know that there are other people like them. But I fully recognize that not everybody is going to have that same comfort with those names. And even if they feel that comfort inside, may not feel comfortable or able to share that with other folks.
yeah. So are you guys ready for the last call of the evening?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We're going to go to Andrew in Glasgow. Ooh. Andrew, you are on the air.
Hey, guys.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Doing well. What time is it where you are?
It's 1:15 a.m.
Oh, good Lord. Why are you
on YouTube? Not that we don't appreciate the support.
We really appreciate it, yes.
Well, basically, I really needed to call you guys. I'm a big fan of the show.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
No, that's no problem. But basically, I'll give you a quick story.
Mm-hmm.
I was with this girl on and off for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. And we recently got back together after a conversation. And you may want to put a trigger warning up for this.
We do not have our trigger kittens ready, but yes,
viewers forewarned.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Basically, she told me that she wanted to be raped. Mm-hmm. And I told her that, I would really have a problem with that. And we agreed that we would kind of take it in stages and we would get a bit rougher and a bit more kind of hardcore with, BDSM and things. But
mm-hmm.
it's been about a year now, and we've I think I've got to my limit, and I think it's becoming a bit of a barrier in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get your guys' take on that, because I don't think that I should feel pressured into doing something that makes me uncomfortable. And it's not as simple as breaking up with her, because I really do love her and I really do care about her, but I want to make her happy. But not if I'm having a real kind of dilemma about whether or not I could do the things that she wants me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the last part we talked about in being good, giving, and game is being game for anything within reason.
I did say not morally repugnant or, personally offensive or
within
beyond your capability.
Realm of, absolutely. So, I think I would be quick to say that what she's asking for is not wrong or unreasonable. Some people do prefer terms like ravishment and these different things, getting away from rape, since there is consent, even if that consensual non-consent is sort of negotiated before the scene, before the role play, which is really what we're talking about here. But even if her desires are reasonable, her desire is one thing and expectation is another.
Mm-hmm. There's a really wonderful book that's called Adventures in Desire, What Women Really Want, or I may be flipping it. I think it's What Women Want, Adventures in Desire. In any case, it's a rather short book, but it was from a bunch of sex research that looked into very common female fantasies and kind of got to the psychological basis of them. Mm-hmm. That particular thing, which is called consensual non-consent, CNC, or I really do like the term ravishment, is incredibly common. Mm-hmm. It really is. And the basis of it that the book postulates is that it's about being desired. It's about feeling that one is the goddess, that the male partner is so helpless in the face of this overwhelming desire that they lose the veneer of civilization and lose control. Now, obviously, because rape is a real thing, it's right on the edge, Yeah, but I'm just saying that as sort of why would she even want this?
Right.
That's why. And that's why it's so incredibly common. But of course, absolutely, you're under no obligation whatsoever to do something that is really causing you pain. You might, I hope you're talking with her about it at length, about how much it is paining you, though.
Her reaction to that is, she thinks that we're barely scratching the surface. In her words, she said to me, I want to fear for my life. Mm-hmm. And that's not somewhere I want to go at all. You know, I know how wrong these things can go, and I don't want to be in that position where something could go wrong. And I know we've discussed safety and safe words and things, and I think, you know, she respects my safe words, but, you know, I might as well not have one with her, because it's not something that ever happens. She just wants things to be pushed further and further. And I don't think I don't think I can push it any further and do the things that she wants me to do. And it is starting to cause arguments and things. You know, I don't think the arguments are caused directly by our, by the talks about sex itself, but the arguments are more frequent now than they have been. And I think it's stemming from her frustration that, you know, I can't do the things that she wants, and she does everything I want.
Right. I think from a purely just me perspective, I guess, Megan, simple, vanilla. Regardless of what your desires are and whether your desires are being met, if her desires, if you are uncomfortable with, or that is not your kink, you know, your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay so long as you do not, you know, force it upon me.
This also, by the way, is varsity level, even Olympic level kink.
Yeah,
this is
very much edge
not
play.
baby intro kink at all. This is the big stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems very much like you've given it the old college try. I mean, we could sit here and talk about some different ways that you might feel more comfortable and more safe, but it seems as if you've really wrestled with this and spent some time with this and still found yourself just not feeling comfortable. And that's not a place that we would encourage you to spend a lot of time.
Yeah. And I appreciate everything you said there. It's a difficult one for me, because I do think I could be doing some of the things that she wants me to do on a physical and a moral level, but you know, I think if I go over that hurdle, you know, there's no coming back. But I think that, you know, we do have to have a conversation somewhere in public where she can't freak out. Probably.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and ask the hard question. Would opening the relationship to allow that to happen for her with another partner, would that be at all a possibility?
With all due respect to the talk of, you know, people coming out as being polyamorous, I'm going to say hell no to that one. She's no, she's mine. She's all mine.
Got it.
But
Sure.
And I'm hers as well. It's always been that way. I don't think either of us would ever consider that to be a factor.
Okay.
Even when we were separate, we didn't see other people. I know that she didn't, and I know that I didn't as well. So
I was just looking for
always
the
had that.
magical Deus ex
Solution.
machina,
Yeah.
you know, the wave the wand solution there. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right.
It's going to take time.
And lots of communication. I mean, probably
Yeah.
more and more communication.
And with that being true, and I never want to discourage people from communicating actively and intentionally, it sounds like this has gotten to the point of being a fairly coercive feeling for you. And I almost wonder if you might react differently if there was just a total kibosh on discussing it for a period of time. If you'd feel comfortable saying, look, you've asked me for this, you've let me know you want this, we've talked about how you want this, I've tried, I've let you know that I don't want this, and maybe we just need to drop it for a while. Maybe you'll get a different answer if you ask me again in 6 months, but this is keeping me up nights right now, and I maybe need to take a step back from even having this conversation over and over and over again, because asking the same question repeatedly, hoping for a different answer, is a form of coercion.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I did just want a cuddle as well. So
Yeah, it's very human.
Yes.
It's a very
Yeah,
normal thing.
yeah, I think maybe a back to basics. No, just kind of like bringing it back to what I'm more comfortable with, and her kind of accepting it, but then occasionally pushing it out there a bit more might work. But I think I've always kind of had those kind of desires within me, even though I haven't practiced them until now.
Mm-hmm.
I was a teenager in the early noughties. I grew up with porn, so even though now some of the things that I'm doing, I would watch and be, what the fuck am I doing? But yeah, to be fair, I have had a lot of fun exploring that side of me, and I think she's had a lot of fun exploring that side of her. And it probably will remain a permanent part of our sexual relationship. But I don't think that I'm ever going to be able to go the full 10 out of 10 for her. But I suppose I could use that as a desire for her in some way. Sorry, it's really late and I've got to be in work early, so I'm not all that good at communicating right now. Yeah. No, it's been really good. I haven't spoken about this to anybody, so this has been really good for me being calling.
Good.
Yeah, and I guess I would just reiterate that it's not unreasonable for her to ask, but we would say it's very unfair of her to insist. And from not knowing y'all, just the sound of your voice, that seems to be where things have gotten. And so letting her know that, right now, you can just quit asking. Right now, I'm just not in a place where this is going to be a thing. And maybe 10 years from now it will be, maybe 10 months from now it will be, but maybe not. Maybe for the rest of your life, this is never going to be something you're interested in, and that's okay. And she can make her choice on how to deal with that or how to react to that, but hounding you for it is not a appropriate reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Well, Andrew, we hope that helps you. And also, damn boy, it is late.
Go to bed.
Yeah. Screw it, I'll just have an all-nighter and but no, thank you, and thanks again for the show and everything that the ACA does. You all are awesome people.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you the best, and hopefully you get some rest.
And call
Thank
back
you.
soon.
I will do. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
I want to say just real quick, following up on that, because we are about at time. Before you get into your pre-post show spiel, I did want to shout out to Janet in the chat. Hey, Janet. She says she wonders if, based on the last caller, if his partner feels vulnerable or upset that she was open. She finally opened up her kink, and it was not fully accepted. And whether that could be causing a little bit of maybe fear on his partner's part of not being accepted for finally, because we all have those deep, dark, recesses of our desire, and if you finally come out with something,
you're comfortable
and then,
finally rolling that out for somebody, you want them to be enthusiastic about it. But yeah, accepting something isn't necessarily the same as indulging in it.
Right. Correct. Right.
And hopefully she recognizes that, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Is she feeling judged, whether he's judging her or not? It sounds like he's actually been pretty open and accepting, if himself uninterested. Yeah,
whether she's just feeling some vulnerable in some way because of that. Yeah. Well, I think it is definitely that time. I think that was a good show. And thank you so much for
My
being
pleasure.
here.
Really
Such
appreciate
fun.
you being here. It's
Yes.
a great time. We definitely hope that we can keep the conversation going, that you guys will reach out with your emails and everything else. All of our information's right there in the show comments in terms of our Patreon and how to get in touch with us. We would love to continue to hear from you. We'll definitely want to be seeing you next week, as we're going to have a therapist come in and talk to us a little bit about sexuality among the neurodiverse populations. We're also going to be talking this month about holidays and what it's like to be an atheist with Christmas knocking around the corner.
Oh, Aunt Karen.
So we would love to hear your stories and your experiences. And if we can't answer on air, we are always good about getting back over email. So we'd love to continue to hear from you.
And that is sex@atheist-community.org, not com, org. Also, don't forget, smash that like and subscribe button. And did you have anything else before we take it out?
I suppose not.
All right. Well, the way we sign off every week, in the words of Dr. Daryl Ray, go give yourself an orgasm, or better yet, give someone else an orgasm. Bye, guys.